What's up, people? Today's question is, what was the best moment you've seen where the real world hit a spoiled rich kid? So, as always, get comfortable, and let's dive into the first story. Story 1. I once met a rich kid whose parents bought him a car, but he treated it like garbage, driving recklessly on purpose and abusing it in every way. He was completely sure that once he trashed this one, his parents would buy him the car he actually wanted. Luckily, when he finally wrecked it, his parents decided he wasn't responsible enough for another car and refused to buy him a new one. Since then, he's had to take the bus or rely on his friends for rides. He was one of the most entitled people I'd ever met. For example, if you invited him over, he would just take whatever he wanted from your fridge as if it were an open buffet. What a character. Story 2. I saw Justin Bieber throw a tantrum because he didn't get what he wanted. It was 2011, I can't remember the exact date, but my friends and I had decided to eat at a restaurant in downtown Portland. After dinner, some of us went to check out a new Nike store. Bieber and his crew showed up, and he loudly complained, "Why are there so many people here? Can someone ask them to leave?" His friends actually tried to politely convince the customers to leave. Nike employees quickly shut that down, telling them it wasn't possible and asking them to stop. That's when Bieber lost his temper. He had a full-blown meltdown because they wouldn't close the store just for him to shop alone. It was honestly embarrassing to watch. Story 3. A spoiled rich kid pulled up to school in a $325,000 Lamborghini, revving the engine and showing off. Then, out of nowhere, he lost control and crashed straight into a concrete wall, completely destroying the car. Story 4. A father bought his son a salmon pink high-level Mercedes. The kid hated the color and complained about it. So, the dad took the car back, sold it, and never bought him another one. Story 5. I once saw a college student driving an insanely expensive car, probably worth $500,000. He rear-ended an older woman whose car was completely totaled. His car wasn't in great shape either. He got out and immediately started screaming at her, while she was in tears, panicking about being late for work. He kept yelling that she was going to have to pay for all the damage to his supercar. When the police arrived, they took statements from both of them. Then, about 10 of us, witnesses, stepped forward to give our own accounts. We all agreed he was at fault, which was true. I had never seen so many people stick around for a minor car accident, but I guess we all had the same feeling inside. We all wanted to make sure justice was served. Story 6. One of my college classmates was ridiculously rich. I didn't realize just how wealthy she was until I had to explain her what a discount coupon was. She even bragged multiple times about how she didn't care about the philosophy degree, or the college in general. She was only there because his parents made her get a diploma to access his trust fund. I don't think I ever saw her attend class. Eventually, she got expelled in his second year for academic dishonesty. That seemed to be the final straw for his parents, because they cut off his credit card shortly after. It was a serious wake-up call for her. Somehow, she managed to get a psychology degree from another university, despite her expulsion record. She's doing quite well right now. We've kept in touch, and the last time we talked, he was considering grad school. Story 7. A local business owner sent his son to a prestigious university. When the son graduated with multiple degrees, the father retired and handed the business over to him. The kid immediately hired all his college buddies, made the management team wear white cowboy hats, and had them drive white trucks. He started making drastic changes to the business. It only took 2 months for his dad to take back control. He fired his son and all his friends. Years later, when the father passed away, he left the business to his daughter instead. Even though she had fewer degrees, she was far more competent than her brother. Story 8. In this case, the rich kid wasn't the one who got a reality check, it was his father. The dad was a highly successful and well-respected surgeon. He fully expected his son to follow in his footsteps and go to medical school. But, against all odds, the son refused. Instead, he got a job working at Costco, pumping gas. He's been with the company ever since. Thanks to steady raises and bonuses, he now lives comfortably. According to him, he simply didn't want the high-stress lifestyle his father had. Story 9. About 10 years ago, I was having a beer with a friend from a very wealthy family. One day, I mentioned that I was struggling to pay my rent and bills while attending college. His just response, "Why don't you just ask your mom to pay for it, dude?" What he didn't know was that my mom was disabled, and we had never had much money. He immediately realized what he said, and I noticed a slight sense of regret on his face. I think that was the first time he truly realized that not everyone has parents who can support them financially. Story 10. Several years ago, I worked at Starbucks. One day, a new girl was hired. she was around 20 years old and had grown up in an extremely wealthy family. Her parents forced her to get a job, probably to teach her some responsibility. One night, when we were closing, I asked her to help wash the dishes. She just stared at me with a blank expression and said, "I don't know how." Turns out, she had grown up with housekeepers and had never washed a single dish in her life. So yes, I had to literally teach her step by step how to clean a plate. Story 11. A distant relative of mine spent his entire college life, and his youth in general, partying. His father, a company owner, gave him $120,000 a year to spend however he wanted. He traveled the world, went to Bali, Thailand, and Europe, and attended Oktoberfest every single year. His life was just one big, never-ending vacation. At 32, he decided to settle in a luxurious ski resort town in the US and open a new business with his gold-digging girlfriend. But when he transferred his money to his new US bank account, only $2,000 showed up. Turns out, his father had secretly cut him off, and he hadn't even noticed. And his girlfriend? Well, she immediately dumped him and went off to find another rich guy. Story 12. I used to work at a casino in Las Vegas. One night, a group of teenage girls came up to my counter, excitedly talking about their upcoming 18th birthday party. They planned to have an adult-free celebration in Vegas, just a bunch of underage girls running wild. What they didn't realize was that you have to be 21 to check into a casino hotel. When I told them they couldn't book their rooms, they started screaming at me like lunatics. I called security and told the girls they could either go play in an arcade or find a non-casino hotel that accepted underage guests. Their rage turned into tears within seconds. Story 13. I'm from Canada, and the son of a very famous and wealthy lawyer was in my high school. After graduating, he went to a prestigious university in the United States. His parents had been buying alcohol for him and his friends during their first year of college, but in the dorms, the administrator gave them a warning because alcohol was strictly prohibited. The boy responded by punching the dorm administrator, and the resident advisor called the police. In the end, he even broke one of the officer's teeth with a punch. Long story short, his parents had to drive 6 or 7 hours to pick him up, and he wasn't even allowed to leave the state until after his trial. The last thing I heard about him is that he was working at a McDonald's or something like that. Story 14. I went to high school with a kid who always showed up in high-end cars because his father owned one of the largest construction companies in the area. This guy was incredibly arrogant and constantly parked his massive trucks across 2 or even 3 parking spots. One day, he got himself a supercar and decided to drive over 160 kilometers per hour while being chased by the police. He had a couple of friends with him in the car, and they were begging him to slow down, but he ignored them and kept accelerating. Of course, he ended up crashing into a business, causing a massive amount of property damage. He was charged with multiple felonies. In most states, driving over 130 kilometers per hour is a crime on its own, but on top of that, he was charged with kidnapping because his friends were in the car against their will. The guy never returned to school, and I have no idea what happened to him after that. To clarify, this didn't happen on a highway, it was just a normal road. The real crime wasn't just reckless driving, it was the fact that he refused to let his passengers out, which led to kidnapping charges. Story 15. First year of college. In the dorms, the guy who lived across the hall from me was a spoiled rich kid. It was clear that his family had money. A few weeks into the second semester, he and one of his friends found a checkbook in the basement of the dorms. Being complete idiots, they decided to write themselves a check and cash it at the bank. The teller immediately called the police because the names on their IDs didn't match the bank account holder's information. They were both arrested on the spot. I talked to him the night he got arrested, and he just kept saying that his dad would handle everything and that it would all be fine. That same weekend, I saw his dad packing up all his belongings from the dorms because, apparently, he had been permanently expelled. I guess daddy couldn't fix everything after all. Story 16. In a country with high alcohol taxes, a group of wealthy young people entered a bar. There were about 10 or 12 of them, and they spent the entire night ordering cubatas from the bartender. Once they ran out, the bartender asked if they wanted a different drink, like shots or tequila. One of the most intoxicated guys casually replied, "Whatever, my dad pays for everything." The bartender then served double JB for all the kids, and even some random strangers who were invited to a few rounds. In the end, the guy who handed over his credit card had tears in his eyes when he saw the bill. And for good reason. I was one of those who enjoyed free whiskey that night, and I still remember that alcohol at that bar cost about 10 times more than in a regular store. Story 17. I once met a girl who apparently couldn't grasp how people manage their daily expenses. We spent a lot of time together because she was in love with me, and I remember she always insisted on eating at expensive restaurants. Meanwhile, I had no problem eating somewhere more affordable. However, she kept pushing me to stay with her, despite knowing I couldn't afford it. One day, I told her, "I can't, unless you want to invite me." She refused. So I showed her my finances and explained that eating with her every day would cost me as much as my entire monthly salary. From that day on, I eat alone. Story 18. Many years ago, a couple from Woodside, California, hired me to help their 18-year-old son face the real world, as they had spoiled him to absurd levels. My first move was to take away all of his unlimited platinum credit cards. He threw a fit that lasted for days. At one point, he angrily asked, "So where am I supposed to get money from?" I simply replied, "Get a job like everyone else." He even threatened me a couple of times, saying his parents would fire me if I didn't follow his orders. They didn't. When he realized he had no way to pay for his excessive spending, and that he not only had to cover rent and bills but also taxes, he quickly enrolled in college to get a degree. He's still kind of an idiot, but at least now he has a job and a bit of education. Story 19. There was a guy at my high school from a well-known family deeply involved in politics. He was lazy in class and extremely arrogant. After graduation, he didn't do much, but eventually, he decided to run for office simply because he had the same name as his father. He won easily. People didn't realize he was the son, not the father. As a public official, his social media posts were interesting. He once expressed his deep support for the black community because of the incredible contributions of Tupac and 50 Cent, his favorite rappers. He also once dropped a loaded gun in the middle of a session after delivering a speech in favor of gun rights. Despite all this, he kept getting elected, thanks to his family's connections and the unwavering support of certain political groups. After 6 years in office, he was finally arrested for soliciting inappropriate acts from a minor online. When they investigated further, they also discovered he had been trafficking illegal substances. The worst part? His family is genuinely good and worked hard to improve the community, but now they have to deal with the mess he left behind. Story 20. During my first year of university, I had a fourth-year classmate from an incredibly wealthy Middle Eastern family. He had a tough time adjusting to independent living. He had to figure out how to buy and cook his own food. One morning, I woke up and found him in the kitchen trying to eat eggs and toast he had made himself. He asked me how people usually cooked fried eggs because his were way too crunchy. It turned out he had cracked the whole egg, shell and all, directly into the pan and cooked it like that. I couldn't stop laughing. Story 21. Back in the 90s, a guy at my high school got himself a brand new Chevrolet Camaro. At the time, I had an old 80s Pontiac Phoenix with a 6-cylinder engine. A couple of days after he got his Camaro, we were at a red light when he tried to challenge me to a race. My friends hyped me up, so I figured, why not? He revved his engine aggressively, trying to do a burnout. But as soon as his tires gained traction, he shot forward at full speed, straight into an intersection, and crashed into the car of one of the few police officers' wives in town. Needless to say, his life went downhill in a matter of minutes. Story 22. I live in a university dorm full of spoiled rich kids, the type who constantly ask, "Do you even know who my dad is?" Meanwhile, I'm one of the few who doesn't come from money. Our school's baseball program has 2 teams, Team A, which competes in a higher league, and Team B, which plays in a lower division. My friends and I had been playing since we were kids, but we were always on Team B. This year, Team A was stacked with rich kids who had top-tier equipment and acted like they were unbeatable. The funny thing? We won our league, while they finished dead last in theirs. They were even on the verge of being relegated. To boost their egos, they set up an exhibition game against us, trash-talked us in front of the entire program, and bragged about their expensive gear. Our coach told us to stay focused and let our game do the talking. And we did. 4 innings in, their coach surrendered. Final score? 13-0. They only got 2 players on base the entire game. Meanwhile, my brother pitched a perfect game, and I was his catcher. Our batting was on point, and we shut those entitled brats up completely. Easily one of the most satisfying moments of my life. Story 23. There was a boy in my class who was the heir to an immense fortune. One day, he was bothering some boys in the class, saying unnecessary nonsense to some guys and calling cowgirl to a fat girl since she was overweight. Then, a special education boy punched him in the gut and left him on the ground sobbing. When one of the teachers thought of retaliating against the boy who had punched him, another classmate started hitting the uneducated boy in the face because he wasn't going to face any punishment. The truth is, it left his face looking quite a mess. Story 24. I knew a boy at the institute whose parents were very rich. When he got his driver's license, they bought him a Mercedes, worth about $70,000. A month or two later, he crashed it into a light pole while driving drunk. His parents had to bail him out to prevent him from facing the full penalty for driving under the influence, and they even bought him another high-end Mercedes. Unfortunately, at the age of 23, he overdosed on substances and died. Story 25. I knew a rich kid at university who partied every night. His parents found out that he was failing practically all his classes, so one Saturday morning, they secretly brought him the replacement keys to the Ferrari they had bought for him and took it away. I also knew another boy at the institute who pretended not to have to pay attention in class because his grandfather was the president of a very famous multinational cereal company. The boy was born into privilege, but the last time I heard from him, he had deleted his Facebook account and was still working at Burger King 5 years after finishing high school. Apparently, alcohol and substance abuse had caused damage to his family relationships. Story 26. One of my university classmates told his parents that the end-of-school trip cost $400 more than it really did, so he could buy a lot of alcohol. His parents paid for basically everything he wanted. He had a credit card and ordered food with it at least once a day, making purchases over $150 regularly. In the end, they discovered he had lied about the trip's cost, and even though they still gave him money, they took his credit card away after the trip. The funniest part was that during the time he was without it, he acted like he had lived the hardest experience ever, but in time, he overcame it. Now, he's more rational and sensible than before. In the end, it had a positive effect on him, so I'm glad. Story 27. A boy from my class won $1 million playing the lottery when he was around 19. Since then, he became super arrogant, thinking he was the best. He used to go from bar to bar, buying rounds for everyone. He did nothing for 20 years, and when he received his last lottery payment, he ended up an alcoholic with no savings, no possessions, and no skills. He hasn't done anything to make the most of that money despite having the opportunity to do great things, and now every couple of months, he's in the hospital for alcohol-related issues and mental breakdowns from his alcoholism. He lost everything because he didn't know how to manage it. It's such a shame. Story 28. I had a friend at university whose parents were rich enough to have a mansion in America and another in Europe. She used to despise me for saying that I was happy to go to any medical school that accepted me because I had a great vocation for medicine and wanted to help others. She always emphasized that she could get into any university she wanted because she had enough money to access the most prestigious ones. She said her mom could get her into any of the top 20 universities in the world. She had this attitude that even though I was a better student than her, I would go to any school that accepted me, while she would go to her dream university because that's how the world works. This year, I checked her Facebook, and it turns out she isn't exactly at a top university. She's actually at a public medical university that's significantly lower than the one I'm attending. I don't mean to say I expected her to not get into any university, because that's harsh, but I'm glad that time has put her in her place. Story 29. There was an Instagram model who was filmed insulting a security guard at a fashion gala. The man stood firm and didn't let her in because she wasn't famous enough to get an entrance pass and hadn't been invited. The funniest part is that once the video went viral, the security guard ended up with more followers than her. Story 30. The protagonist of this story is not an arrogant troublemaker like the rest of the spoiled kids in this thread. I was just quite surprised to see someone so disconnected from reality. The 19-year-old fourth-year classmate of my boyfriend runs a very successful online business. He lives in Los Angeles and spends his free time buying new $2,500 shoes. You know the type, someone who doesn't care about money and buys whatever they want without thinking twice. Despite growing up in a humble family, he's completely disconnected from reality. One day, I was feeling quite sick, and the doctor told me to go see another doctor. I don't have good insurance, and I was already dealing with other bills, so I told him I couldn't pay with the money I earned from my part-time job. He asked me how much they paid me, and I said $9.80 per hour, meaning I earn a little less than $200 every 2 weeks. He was shocked that I was working while attending college and even lived on about $100 a week. He's still a good kid. He insisted I go to the doctor and even offered to help me financially if I needed it. Story 31. A classmate of mine repeated the course because he spent the entire academic year going from party to party, wasting his father's money on alcohol, and ignoring his coursework. The funny thing is that his father had made a deal with him. He would inherit his construction company, 2 cafeterias, a fleet of trucks, and a complete team at his disposal. He just had to do one thing: take his university studies a little more seriously and pass the course. Well people, that's all for today. If you liked this video, leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more videos. We'll see you in the next one.